And we're discussing the latest film that Curtis Bowers has made, Agenda 2, Masters of Deceit. And we carried Agenda, the first version, back in 2010. This is an updated version I've seen a couple of times. It is awesome. It is a bit frightening, I would have to admit, and I think, Eric, you and Melanie felt the same.
We did, but at the same token, as I watched it, I realized that the same kind of oppression that we have gone through in the books we've written and the different things that we've researched, it bound to be the kind of things that Curtis is experiencing. And so I think it's apropos here to remind the listening audience that with him putting himself out here, much the same way as we do, but in doing what he's done with this film, we need to be praying for him and his family.
Yes. Curtis, you've got Dr. David Noble in your films, and in this one, the updated one, and he says that the leftists will eventually use violence to get their Marxism installed in America. Do you have a timetable on that? Are you looking at in the next 5 years, 10 years?
I don't know if you can say timetables. It's hard to judge things like that. But if you, again, are a student of history and a student of the Marxist-Leninist mindset and the socialism of the 20th century, you see that usually when they came to power in a country and they slowly kind of manipulated things into their favor, once they got to about 70%, where they had 70% of the people voting for their socialist, or they always have a great sounding name. It's probably called the Declaration of Independence Party or whatever.
Yes,
It's kind of funny, their names. But once in a country, once they had that, that's usually when there was no more Mr. Nice Guy. They started literally rounding up and executing those that were in opposition to them. So we're very close to 50-50 right now in America percent. So I think it's a few years probably till that happens, although you never know. Sometimes some crisis situation or catastrophe can give them the legitimacy to come in and take huge strides forward that they wouldn't normally be able to take. That's why they love crisis, just like Rahm Emanuel said,
right.
Don't ever let a serious crisis go to waste. Use it to take ground you can't normally get. So that's why they love, whether it's the environmental movement or whatever it is, they love making us fearful of, we're all going to die on the planet. We better save the planet, and we're going to have to make some big changes to do that. And everyone's like, okay, I guess if we have to, we have to. And so they love those type of things because it just allows them to go so far forward in such a short period of time.
And you also say that, and this is in the segment on electoral manipulation, and you feel that the global government will be worldwide Leninism. And, of course, we don't know that. We do know that global government is on the horizon, whether it's 5 minutes or 5 years or 50 years. I think it's fairly soon. We know the Antichrist will be in charge of the world someday. Will he be a Marxist-Leninist? Will he just be a plain old socialist? I don't think we have those answers, but I'm sure you considered all of this. The Bible talks about it. Revelation 13 is all about a global government.
Right. And the reason I think it will be a Marxist-Leninist, whoever it is, however they do it, is because socialism by itself does not work. It cannot continue on its own. It doesn't sustain itself. It is always in the process of dying. And so to have a one-world government, to have something that is sustainable, it has to have the totalitarian teeth behind it of Marxism to make the socialism work, where you have a gun at your head. If you don't work, you get a bullet. And so it always has to end there. That's the end road of all government, is communism. It's the Marxism is the end. That's where it always ends. There's no other. You can't stop on that road even if you want to, because it keeps pushing itself to the end, because it has to, because you're all of a sudden you're out of money because socialism doesn't work, and so you have to start making tough decisions. You have to decide who gets health care, who doesn't. You have to do these things, and of course when sinful man has that much power in his hands, he's going to use it always to benefit himself. And so the poverty, the suffering, and the misery just accelerates, and then people start rebelling, and then they say they have to crush the people so they can't rebel. So that's why it always ends in Marxist-Leninism. Even before that was invented, it ended in Marxist-Lenin, those philosophies. Marx studied history and knew that's how the process works, and so he just copied what he'd seen in world history and implemented it into a Marxist philosophy.
That's what voting block of 20-something people out there is a scary thing, that they have so backed Sanders during this winter, this push for president. And that's the thing. They don't have any basis really to understand what they've done or what they're doing. They're just going along for the ride. They think that it ends with socialism. socialism, but it really doesn't. You're exactly right.
If I can interject a personal story, it happened 3 days ago, and I was with a Christian friend. I hadn't seen her in many, many, many years, and she just says, I'm a Bernie fan. And I said to her, do you really know what that means? Do you really know what socialism means? I said, your kids and grandkids could have 90% of their income taxed. And she said, fine, because the government will take care of all of us completely. I said, no, it doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. There are things that are going to come along you're not anticipating, and it's not the rosy picture you think it is. But Curtis, again, we're dealing with a society that doesn't understand so much. They have limited comprehension of what
Right.
you and I and Eric are talking about.
They think government has money. The government doesn't have one penny.
That's
It's
right.
our money they have to take from us and redistribute. And so they don't understand, like that lady saying that, she's naively thinking that somehow there's magic pile of money out there that governments, their own personal stash, they can give to you. They can't. And so they have to take it from someone. Every time they give her one penny, they had to take it by force from someone else. And what happens after a while, people go, I'm not working anymore. They're taking everything I'm working. So no one is working, and then there's no money to share. So the government has two options. One, you get the guns out, or two, you start printing money and giving that money out. But, of course, that money that's being printed has no value. So all of a sudden, you go into total economic collapse because there's no value. The currency loses all value. That's what happened to Germany, and then Hitler rose to power after that because it completely collapsed. So that's the only two options. And usually, we're far enough along, and America is the last domino to fall, that it will, I'll tell you, it's not going to be printing presses. It's going to be the guns, because once they have America, they have the whole shebang. Most of the world wouldn't go against anything. If tomorrow the United Nations said we're implementing a one-world government, you'd only, in America and a few other countries, going, hey, we don't want that. The rest of the country, they could care less. They're worried about what they're going to eat today. They don't
You
care.
hear the applause almost.
Sure, but let me ask you a question, and I know Eric can weigh into this too, because all three of us are pretty familiar with what the pulpits are dealing with today, or what they're not dealing with. Are you communicating with pastors in America, Curtis Bowers, as far as the things they're not telling the people? That's what's troubling me.
Yes, there are good churches out there, which is wonderful, but the vast majority of the churches that 100 years ago would be pounding the truth from the pulpits and influencing the culture and the communities and stuff, it's not happening. 10% of churches in America that are being led like God intended them to be, where the pastor is preaching Genesis to Revelation, but not only that, the worldview that goes with it.
The
so you
worldview.
understand how that all fits into everything that we do. The Bible has an answer for everything. It's not just a 1 hour on Sunday book. It's the key blueprint to how everything is to be operated, from family to business to government to everything. And when you turn from that or are ignorant of it, then you do it man's way, like I said before earlier. And when you do it man's way, it always ends in disaster, because man's ways are not God's ways.